Hello. We want to welcome everybody to another episode of District 5 in the Know, a collaboration between District 5 community councils, including East Liberty Park Community Organization, Liberty Wells Community Council, Central Ninth Community Council, and Ballpark Community Council. In the Know is a series that focuses on community topics that affect Salt Lake City District 5 families and neighbors at large. My name is Christina Robb, and I currently serve as the chair of East Liberty Park Community Organization. I am joined by Amy Hawkins, current chair of Ballpark, Jeff
Hello.
Larson, who serves as the vice chair of East Liberty Park,
Hello.
and this is David Jones, who serves as the East Liberty Park on the East Liberty Park Education Community as a board member at large. Thanks to everybody for being here. I'm also online with Russell Askren, candidate for Precinct 5, Salt Lake City School Board. I guess that's all, right? That's what he's serving for.
Yes.
So today we are interviewing all the candidates for Salt Lake City School District's Board of Education candidates for Precinct 5. There are two candidates in this election, and we are going to get to know both of them through these interviews. This interview is with, as I said, Russell Askren, and he lives within the boundaries of East Liberty Park Community Organization. So we're thrilled to have him as a neighbor up in our community council. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes. Glad to be here.
Yay. So as a note to our viewers, neither candidate received the questions prior to this interview. The format of this interview is very simple. Russell, you'll first have approximately 3 minutes to introduce yourself in any way that you wish to do that. So just go ahead and, freeform that. For the first round of questions, Jeff, David, and Amy will introduce themselves first to the public and then jump right into asking their first questions. You'll have 3 minutes to answer each question. When your time is complete, I will call time. After the first series, we'll just go one after the other until we're done. Do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay, great. Let me get out my timer
Okay.
and I'll let you know when we can begin.
Okay.
So I just want to kind of add for the public that we're being really specific and sort of scripted on these videos, not just having a free form conversation like we normally have in the past. And the reason why we're doing this is just so that we can get information from each candidate in maybe a more equitable way than we have in the past. And we're limiting the dialogue as much as possible. So for our viewers out there, we hope this format works for you. And we appreciate any feedback from the community on what you might want to see different in the future. Okay, focusing right now on my stopwatch. Whoa, I've been recording something for a very long time. Whenever you're ready with the first question.
This is my introduction, right?
Correct?
Okay. So my name is Russell Askren. I've lived in Salt Lake City since 2005, having moved here from San Diego. I've been a district parent since 2007. I've had 3 children, attend various schools in the district. We've used a pretty wide range of services in the district, everything from neighborhood ELP to magnet ELP, local resource, self-contained special education. We've done out-of-boundary transfers. We've seen a lot of what the school district has to offer from the parent's standpoint. Part of what we've experienced is my motivation for running for school board, particularly the difficulties we've had getting services for our son who's needed special education services. The bureaucracy, the lack of concern from a variety of people in the district showed me that the district isn't always concerned What I've heard in talking to people is that people love their local school, which is our case, but when they run into district bureaucracy, that they start to have problems. And the district bureaucracy is often overwhelming and they don't get what they need out of it. I'm public school educated from kindergarten through my PhD at the U. I understand the value of public education. Public schools are the greatest tool we have for social mobility and creating social equity. You give people a good education and all kinds of doors open up to them. But we've been underperforming for a long time. We've had problematic members of the board. We've had a turnstile leadership at the superintendent level. If you look at the latest district report card that came out from the state, we don't have a comprehensive high school where more than 50% of the people students test on grade level. East High School only has roughly 25% of its students testing on grade level. That seems problematic to me. I could look through other schools and find even worse performance than that. I don't think there's a one solution fix all these problems, but it seems to me like these problems have been getting worse. The report card just released was worse than the report card that was released the year before. I watch board meetings and I'm thinking, nobody's asking difficult questions. Nobody's asking the questions about why this policy, how we can make this better. What is it that we need to do?
Time.
Okay.
First question.
All right. Welcome again, Russell. My name is Jeff Larson. I am on the East Liberty Park Community Organization Board. I also have 3 children that attend Salt Lake School District schools, and I'm been heavily invested in my time and my efforts into making sure they have great services. So thank you for being with us and your desire to help and serve the district. Leading into that, what are your most important takeaways from the 2022 state audit of the district? What are the most pressing issues it raised? And how would you address the issues in underperforming schools and programming while at the same time cutting the budget and improving cost efficiencies?
Wow, there's a lot in that question. So, I'm not sure that I would want to let the state audit completely guide what I want to do. I think that if we focus on the outcomes that we need to reach, that the issues in the state audit will be resolved. I think, for example, if we look at the school closure process we just went through, it lacked transparency. People felt like they didn't know what was going on at the beginning. And at the end, they felt like they still didn't know what was going on. And I think that's because the district was more worried about responding directly to the audit than trying to figure out what's the best way that we can configure our elementary schools for students. I think we have 2 big problems right now. One is our student outcomes are just too low. And I don't think there's one magic solution for that. We know what works generally in schools, and that is smaller class sizes and individual intervention. And that takes a lot of money that we might not have. The second big problem I think we have is I think we have a divide between the teachers in the schools and what goes on at the district office. And so the district office isn't listening to teachers all the time. For example, some months ago, a group of middle school teachers came to the board and said, middle school's not working. We need to revisit it and see what would be best. Well, the district agreed with them, created a committee to evaluate what's going on in middle school, but didn't feel the need to put teachers on that committee. The teachers fought about it and finally got one person on this committee of 20 people. I mean, that to me shows the divide that the district isn't listening. In talking to special ed teachers a couple of weeks ago, they said they hear their district director talking to the board and don't feel like it's addressing the issues that they actually face day in and day out. So I think if we start focusing on those outcomes and how it is that we can help individual schools with the problem that individual schools have, such as Northwest Middle School is just done with their attendance problem, that we'll find we start getting better outcomes and we address the issues that are in the state audit.
Time.
Next.
Russell, my name is David Jones. I'm a member of the East Liberty Park Community Organization. And this is the comments and questions I have for you. While nearly half of the K through 12 student population resides west of the I-15 corridor, there are no high schools located west of the I-15 corridor. Please talk about the challenges this creates for the district and for the student population, and whether you support the addition of a fourth comprehensive high school west of I-15 in the Salt Lake School District, and why or why not.
Okay. I think that the district needs to revisit the issue of a West Side high school, a high school west of I-15. I was unhappy with the way the information was presented in June when they said they'd done this study and they couldn't support a fourth high school in Salt Lake City because there was no property. I think that they didn't look hard enough to try to figure that out. What exactly that fourth high school should look like, I'm not sure. I'm sensitive to the issues that perhaps we isolate students from the Glendale Poplar Grove issue from other people, and that could be problematic that way. To create a fourth high school, we have to reduce the size of our other three high schools. Material I've read said that the optimal size of high schools is between 12 and 1,500 students. That once you get above 1,500 students, you get a level of anonymity that starts to create discipline problems and an inattention to every student's academic needs. Ideally, I'd love to see a fourth high school. I'd love to see it created as a comprehensive technical high school where we can put advanced CTE subjects, but also offer AP courses for those students who want to both have the hands-on piece in high school and still take calculus to prepare them for engineering study at the university. I have students in my engineering classes at the U that have come from those kinds of schools elsewhere. So I think that we need to revisit that. I think it's students on the west side spend far too much time on buses. They don't feel like they are part of the school. So East effectively has two schools going there. People from the East Bench and people from the West, and they don't mingle. And that was my experience with busing in Los Angeles in the 1970s as a high school student. We didn't mingle with the students who came from the inner city. So I would really like us to see us reopen that issue, which also means reconsidering the bond and how we rebuild West and Highland high schools.
Thank you.
Hello again. I'm
Hi.
Amy J. Hawkins. I have the pleasure of serving as the chair of the Ballpark Community Council. And like you, I am also the product of public schools from kindergarten through my PhD. And I teach at the University of Utah School of Medicine. And my question is, would you please talk about your thoughts about the bond to rebuild Highland High School and West High School? Are you supportive of the bond? Why would residents want to give the school district $750 million without a concrete plan, with declining enrollment and a seeming lack of adaptive direction as we move into the future?
I've been very open about my opposition to the bond. In board meetings, I've written the arguments against the bond that appear in the state voter information pamphlet. I think the bond is premature I don't think we have a good enough idea of what it is that we want to do. We just finished a major building project, the district offices, that finished 48% over its initial budget in the short space of 10 years. I don't know how we can anticipate what a high school is going to cost, for which we have no plans whatsoever, that's anticipated to take 7 to 10 years to build. It seems to me like we need to go a little slower, have better plans for both high schools. If we're going to reconsider a fourth high school, that complicates the picture even further. This isn't about, do we have a need to make repairs? Do we have a need to rebuild the high school? It's about knowing what we're doing before we start it. If you were rebuilding a house, you'd build your plans and you'd go back and forth with your architect, and then you get a contractor involved, and you wouldn't go get your money until you knew exactly what you were going to build. Well, the district is asking for the money long in advance, and it's a lot of money. And it's significantly more money than Granite has used to rebuild Skyline High. So I'm wondering where the gold plating is. I'm opposed to the inclusion of the athletic field houses. I think they're an unnecessary expense that we don't have to incur at this time. So I would really, everybody I talk to, I ask them to vote no on the bond. And so I'll ask each of you to vote no on the bond.
Thanks, Russell. Our next question will lead into that. Do you believe that declining enrollment in the district is an inevitable result of shifting population within Salt Lake City, or has the district pushed in-boundary students out? And if so, what changes can be made to bring students who have left back and make district schools attractive to future students and future growth?
Well, I don't know that I have the expertise to answer the demographic question of, whether declining enrollment is related to something larger going on in Salt Lake City. My preference is that we focus on making our schools the best schools they can be. And that will make people want to come to our schools and not need to go elsewhere. The state has decided they want an all of the above approach to education. Private schools, charters, public charters, homeschooling, micro schools, all these different ways. And I don't think that the board should fight that. I think we should just say that's the environment we live in, and our job is to make our schools the best we can. If our schools are good and meet the needs of the families in our district, then people will keep their students in our local schools. We might even be able to attract people around our boundaries who say, wow, there's something good going on there. I want my children to go there. The argument that public schools can't always fulfill the need of each and every student seems to make some sense to me, having children who've struggled in the normal public school. But I think public school is the only approach that scales to teaching the number of students we need to teach. And we need to work hard at making sure it meets the needs of each and every school, of each and every student, regardless of what's going on with the population in Salt Lake City. That's difficult to understand, and I think a difficult problem to serve. I think our long-range planning has to acknowledge what's going on with our enrollment, whether it's going to continue to decline. It's one of the questions I ask about the rebuilds, is that the feasibility studies both increase the student population possibilities at the two high schools. And I've asked, why are we building bigger schools than we already have if we have declining enrollment? And I worry about the school closure process, wondering how, if we've had to close elementary schools and enrollment continues to decline, how do we set up a good process if we have to close more elementary schools, or we have to close a middle school somewhere along the way?
Thank you, Russell. This is somewhat of a follow-up to that question and in your answers. that will require a little more specificity. The question is, what could be done to encourage out-of-boundary students to enroll in elementary, middle, and high schools in the Salt Lake School District? And would you be supportive of such efforts? And if so, how would you implement such efforts?
I think outcomes, if we're doing the best that we can do and we start to do better than other schools, people will be interested in coming. I think one route to get that way is to implement concepts like looping. Looping's used in the Scandinavian and Baltic countries that have the highest learning outcomes, educational outcomes in the world. Looping creates a cohort of students and teacher and keeps them together for a number of years. And the studies show that we not only get improved student outcomes, we actually get improved teacher outcomes. And so if we do that, then we make our schools better. I had opportunity at the street fair to talk to a teacher from Wallace Stegner who says that he has the option to loop, and he's had his students for 3 years, and he has 76% of his students reading on grade level because he knows his students from year to year, and he's able to teach them more directly where their weaknesses are. I'm not concerned about being the flagship school district in the state. I want to be concerned about having good outcomes. And if we can create those good outcomes, people may come to us. The comprehensive technical high school I mentioned in the question about the West Side High School would also be another way to attract students, especially if we offered CTE pathways that are available at the state level but aren't widely implemented. Things like construction trades, advanced manufacturing trades involving composites and semiconductors and additive manufacturing. These are the areas that are booming in Salt Lake City. And we don't have school students ready to enter those fields when they graduate from high school for those students that aren't planning on going to college. So I think we can do things like that that will attract students.
Thanks, Russell. Which community groups or organizations do you have experience working with? What's your approach to community partnership? Could you talk about how you see your role as a member of the Salt Lake City School Board, but also as a larger community advocate? How would you work with District 5 community councils and Salt Lake City to solve problems?
Well, I like to think myself as open to all kinds of ideas, willing to talk to people and hear and understand how people feel about things and what their reasons are for things. This is part of my academic training in philosophy, is to try to be able to look at things from all kinds of different directions and understand the arguments that other people are making to me. I really have quite a diverse background. My training is all in the humanities, but I spent nearly 25 years in the software industry as both technical staff and technical management. I've had staffs of 22 working for me, budgets of up to $5 million over 3 years. And then I went back to school to get my PhD. I've taught since 2005, and this enables me to look at problems differently. I teach elements of teamwork to my students here at the U. And while I don't have a huge network with many of the organizations around town, because I've been focused on helping my children get through school, which has taken a lot of time, you have to reach out to them and include them. My campaign slogan is Better Schools Together, recognizing that there are lots of stakeholders, some who are routinely considered students, others who are not considered that often, taxpayers without children in school. So one of the things I've proposed is that the school board should be out in communities with town hall type meetings where we can just have a back and forth and talk about things rather than having things confined to the 3 minutes in a public meeting where board members I've seen walk out of those while public comments are being read. So I'm open to all kinds of work of groups to work with. I'm unfamiliar with what community councils are really doing related to education. I just haven't seen any of it in the news. I haven't seen any of it since I started watching board meetings regularly. So I'm open to what these organizations have to say.
Thanks again, Russell. What's your understanding of the projected use of the newly vacant Hawthorne here in District 5 and potentially other new vacant buildings in the district over the next 4 years with the school closures?
So I've heard all kinds of rumors about Hawthorne specifically. Haven't heard rumors about any of the other closed schools, probably because I'm not in the right place to hear those rumors. It's my understanding the district has committed to not selling those properties, at least not to just make a fast buck. I'm aware that in the Hawthorne area, there's some desire to have part of it made to a park. Be open to considering other kinds of uses for those facilities that are compatible with the neighborhoods. I think all of the community councils have to be consulted and have a chance to be part of whatever plans we make for those schools. I think school buildings are really hard to repurpose for anything except schools. And so, it's hard to project where we might go with that. But I oppose the district simply selling property to acquire money that will disappear quickly. Those schools are a real asset, and we should ensure that they remain an asset to the communities of which they are part.
Thank you, Russell. What do you see as the unique issues for our area, and how would you serve as an advocate specifically for District 5?
Well, depending on how we define our area. So let me start with it that obviously the biggest challenge, I think, for any school district in Salt Lake City, but especially one such as Salt Lake City that's in a sort of a different demographic than much of the rest of the state, is the relationship with the legislature and how we convince the legislature that schools are a real asset to them and they would do well to support those schools with increased funding, with increased freedom in establishing their curriculum so that we prepare students, some to go to college, some to be workforce ready. And I think you do that with the legislature by appealing to their own interests, helping them understand that the students who come out of our schools at high school, they're their future employees, their future co-workers, their future managers. Eventually, some of these people will end up in the legislature. One of them will run for governor one day. And we want those people to be adequately prepared for that. To focus more locally, to think about Precinct 5 within the school board, I think a big issue is how do we manage changing demographics, the density of enrollment as it changes? How do we configure our school boundaries to help people really feel like they are part of that school boundary of that school, unlike the problem that we have at East, where we feel like students feel like there are two different kinds of schools going on. And I think that looking at student outcomes has to be done on a per school basis. And I think East needs a lot of attention. I don't know whether Mr. Oakes, as the new principal, will be able to start to turn that around in a while or quickly. I asked myself, they want to spend $40 million on a field house at East. I wonder what would happen if we raised $40 million and applied it to student intervention, what we might be able to do for students. So I really think that a problem for us is academics, especially with students who are in the middle and lower edges or lower sections of our achievement. I think we do a marvelous job with students who are taking AP classes and earning IB diplomas.
Time.
All right, thank you. You've touched on this before, but let's dive into some more specifics. How would you retain the working, pardon me, not retain, how would you improve the working relationship between the board and district employees? How would you retain effective teachers? And most importantly, how would you build the relationship with the superintendent?
Okay. A big piece of my campaign has been to talk about accountability and transparency. I'm actually surprised that the discussions about developing a tool to hold about evaluating superintendent performance, I'm surprised that in an organization as large as the school district that one doesn't already exist. But that's the gist I get from the conversations I hear. I think the district has to be much more transparent and much more collaborative when it's making policy decisions. Things like including teachers on a committee that's evaluating what we do with middle school education. I'm hearing rumors that the district wants to restrict shared governance with the teachers, which I would be opposed to. I think shared governance is an important issue where, again, we need to include all of our stakeholders and listen to them. I think the board has to help the district understand that transparency is a useful tool for us. If you look at the Y2K analytics survey that the district did related to the bond, less than 10% of the people strongly agree that the district manages its money well. Less than 20% of them could say that they strongly agree that the district's headed in the right direction. We solve those problems by transparency and accountability and by being open and helping people to do their jobs better rather than trying to get rid of people. I like to pride myself that I will always tell you what's on my mind. I'll tell you when I know something. I'll tell you when I don't know something. And I'm open to hearing what other people have to say. I think that's the pathway to building constructive relationships with the superintendent, with the business administrator, and with the rest of the board.
All right, thank you. And one final question to sort of wrap things up. Feel free to tell us more about your background, your experience, and your platform, things that you just want to bring up that maybe you didn't have a chance to mention so far in your interview, things that you want to emphasize for the residents of Salt Lake City District 5.
I think we can do better than we have been doing for the last several years. We've had unique challenges like COVID, and it's easy to critique the decisions we made about COVID 4 years after the fact. Harder to critique them if we take into account what we knew at that time. I understand education from the inside out. I've been teaching at the university for nearly 20 years. I'm married to a school teacher, teaches middle school ELL in the Granite School District currently. She has over 30 years of education. And she always laughs at me when I come home and said, oh, I read this really cool thing about teaching. He says, yeah, we had to learn that in as undergraduates because of the differences between teaching modalities. It leads me to think of all kinds of ideas that we can do to improve our schools, to bring everybody together to the table so that we work together, we build better schools together. I don't think we should accept that our high schools test less than 50%. I know standardized tests aren't the only way to measure outcomes, but they are one way to measure outcomes. And then I'm not aware that we use them for much of anything. I'd like to see elementary school children who test below grade level automatically get resource support to try to get them back on target. It's easier to catch those problems early than it is to catch them late. I really want to say transparency. I'd like to see us expand our CTE options. I'd like to see us be able to prepare more students to be workforce ready at graduation. We know fewer students will be going on to higher education to get bachelor's degrees. They don't want to spend 4 years in school if they can go to a Microsoft or Google boot camp and learn to program in 7 or 8 months and come out making $80,000 a year. We have to help those students be prepared for the other aspects of life. How do they become good citizens? How do they know how to manage their money? How do they get along with the people who live in their communities with them? I think we can do better jobs at that. And I think keeping the same board isn't going to help that problem. At least 2 seats will change on the board this election. I think changing a third would also be helpful if we want to have different kinds of outcomes.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russell, for being with us tonight. I think you mentioned all the various stakeholders, including students and parents with children and adults, taxpayers who don't have children in schools. I think from this panel, the people that offered questions to you, you got a good representation of that. And I appreciate you taking time to share your thoughts and your platform, what you would bring to the school district and the board in this role. So thanks for your time and being willing to share where you're coming from and why you feel you'd be effective in this role. So appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity to answer your questions and for getting this information out to voters. I know when you did this in 2020, I really appreciated it and used it to guide how I voted.
Great.
So I thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that is our role, to answer one of your questions, is provide a platform where we can. I mean, we're a volunteer organization that spends our time trying to get information out to people in our areas and provide a conduit for the city and for other elections, as Christina kind of opened with. And so I'll just close this meeting by with the thanks again, and any feedback that you can provide to any people that watch this going forward on ways to improve or provide more information. We're here to provide that conduit and the connection to the city and opportunities like this to get you more information about races or problems that aren't out there in the public otherwise. So thanks for filling that gap and helping us do that. So